can remember my third year as a superintendent, I learned what can only be referred to as opportunity hoarding. And I didn't coin that phrase. I'll need to go look at who did. But it was exactly what it was. We allowed eighth graders to take Algebra 2, and they had taken Algebra 1 in sixth grade and then geometry in seventh, and now they were taking Algebra 2. The problem was that there were only 5 kids assigned to the class, and they had a full-time teacher. The regular 8th grade math class had more than 30 kids in the class. It was opportunity hoarding. And what's worse, my kid was one of the 5. I decided we needed to eliminate that option, and so we made that decision well in advance of course registration, and we worked with families to find options for the very few who still insisted that their child needed to take Algebra 2 in 8th grade. So it's interesting. I mean, you think about what leaders go through as they make decisions that impact others, and they have to straddle the unintended consequences. And one big unintended consequence often is the kind of feedback and uproar that we face from our communities when we make difficult decisions. My guest today, Mike Rossi, has a very similar situation. At the beginning of our conversation, we talk about engaging one's community, and he talks about spotlighting student and employee voice using appreciative inquiry questions like, what do we do well? In the second segment, his after-action review, he talks about making the decision as a new superintendent, alongside his brand new principal, to eliminate the advanced math track at his middle schools. So they made this decision in July, and when parents got their child's schedule, the advanced class just wasn't there. And so his description of 500 parents packed into an auditorium, all lined up behind microphones to give him feedback, well, he paints quite a picture. This is a really interesting episode, particularly for those who are new, who are thinking about making big changes, knowing it's the right thing for children, having to consider those unintended consequences, having to consider the tension that will exist when making a big decision. Thanks for tuning in. Today on An Imperfect Leader, Dr. Michael Rossi is my guest. Michael has spent his entire 36-year professional career in education. He's been a teacher, he's been a coach, he's been a supervisor, a college professor, a principal, and for the last 19 years, as a public school superintendent. Michael is a superintendent for Lenape Valley Regional High School in Stanhope, New Jersey. Michael, welcome to An Imperfect Leader.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Mike, you don't sound that excited. Is it because I kept messing up words?
Well, no. Well, it may be that we just concluded our school day and we have our public hearing on our budget. So
this is why I'm looking at like suspenders and a nice tie.
Even though I've done it,
listeners, if you can see him, he looks great. He looks great.
Yeah, thank you. Even though I've done it so many other times, you still get a little pregame jitters. So
yeah, well, I'll tell you, there's something. I mean, that is very different from state to state, and like New York and New Jersey, where your budget process is more involved. In the state of Missouri and other Midwest states, it just to your board, and that's it, and then you're done. So it's very different in different places. Well, it is really nice to meet you. And I became really interested in talking with you after learning about the process that you used to not only create a strategic plan, but to insist on constant reflection as part of that process. It's an article that you wrote, and that in that process, you included themes like have a process, include everyone, provide time for structured feedback, and then quantify impact. I wonder, would you take a moment, tell us a little bit about how you got to what is called Vision 2027, and then specifically the importance of practicing constant reflection?
So we benefited from having a number of people in this particular organization that have been through the process. There were a number of key stakeholders at all different levels, from the trustees through leadership, through parents, through our most importantly, really, our teachers and our students, of course, that have had some background in planning and organization in the strategic framework that guides how a district makes decisions. So we were able to capitalize on that, and we started with a few touch points that most quality strategic plans include, and that is community forums. That includes community forums. It includes survey feedback from the student voice. I feel is very, very critical, and we have a regional high school here, and certainly you can get quality information from your current students, but we also leveraged on our alumni. We have a thriving alumni association, and we sought, to get some feedback from those folks. The theory being that's our product. I mean, who better to learn from than the folks that we've put out into the world? And of course, we had a number of meetings whereby we went through, a current, like, what do we do well? Our first meeting was, what do we do well? What do we need to maybe change? Typically in those initial settings, we talk about, we look at three questions. What do we want to keep doing? What do we want to start doing? What do we want to stop doing? And so within those, we juxtapose those against what was our current mission statement, what are our core values and core beliefs currently, and then we compiled all that information. We had the great benefit of a facilitator from the New Jersey School Boards Association, Kathleen Helwa. I've worked with her forever, and she and I are a good team. And so we kind of tag teamed it in terms of the kind of a two-pronged, two-headed leadership approach. That was our first meeting, and then we memorialize it. We get all that out to not only the people who attended, but everyone else and anybody that was interested. Our second meeting was creating the ideal, and it just becomes, what is it that we think would be reflective of a perfect school system for our student body. What would be the perfect school system to teach in for our teachers? What would be the perfect school system to lead in, and so on and so forth? What do parents see as what would be perfect for them? What do they want that we, capitalizing on that first meeting? We put all that together, we memorialize it. And then our third and final, not final, but the third public meeting where we just kind of, we had come one, come all. There was, wasn't some strategic planning processes. They identify who they want to, participate, and that's who participates. We just opened it up to anybody who wanted to come at any meeting. You didn't have to come to all of them. You didn't have to come to any one of them. But the third open meeting, if you will, was to write core mission statements, core objectives, and below those objectives, examples. The what, the why, and then the how. And so from there, we took that information, and we being that, all of our leadership team members, any one of the faculty that wanted to be a part of this process, and really anybody that wanted to be a part of it, whether they were custodians or paraprofessionals and so on. And we then ultimately framed it out into 4 domains. These are not unique by any stretch, but they, social emotional learning / mental health was one. Community outreach was the second. Creating multiple pathways for students so that they can carve out their own destinies. And then facilities, that the infrastructure and the physical plant needed to be conducive to 21st century learning experiences and engagements. And then to round it out all the way through, when we got to session 2, we started with a reflection piece about, from session 1. We did that the same thing in meeting number 3. And then once the strategic plan was in place, it was just about June of last year. We had every summer we have administrative retreat, and we brought in some really, really heavy hitters, Sherry, Cammie, a lot of the people that you probably have heard of from ASSA, Elaine Baldwin, and they led us through a retreat. And then we brought in all the sending districts with us too. So we're a 912 regional. And so then what we did is that we had the framework for our strategic plan, and we brought in the feeder leaders from our K-8s, and we designed our 23-24 goals and objectives for this particular school year, which provided the springboard for it. But all through it, all through our retreat, all through our breakout sessions, we built in reflective practice in action. And we sought to find we sought to get a couple of things from that. Just some kind of time to think about what we were doing, think about the work, engage in some type of metacognition, and then see if we can be analytical with it. Like, it's one thing to talk about things. Is there some type of, is there hard data or any data that either supports what we're doing or maybe confronts it in some way? And that became the backdrop for our strategic plan, which we ultimately called Vision 2027.
So in the leadership model that I use to advise others, there's a dimension called the leader's learning work. And that really is the mind of an organization's work. And inside that dimension is a term, system design and systems thinking. And I want to unpack a little bit of what you've been telling me, because it is so tuned into or tied into system design and system thinking. You had a series of, I would call them almost town halls, right? Because anyone could come. So it was open to the entire community. And you engaged in appreciative inquiry, right? What's going well and how do we get more of it? What are some things maybe that we don't want to continue doing, or what are some things that we should start considering doing? You engaged in collective aspiration, right? Because you were starting to get to, what is our compelling purpose? What does a graduate look like for our school district? And I love the fact that you used, or you leverage, the advice and feedback from your alumni base, because it's one thing to talk with your current students. They're going to inherit the district that you're currently in. And so will those who have recently left the system, who may have some advice and counsel that you could make some mid-course corrections based on their thoughts. There's so much here that you were doing that is so systems based. Then breaking that down into subsequent meetings, particularly after you've done all of these 3 sessions, is to then bring people back together, including those who are feeding into your system, to say, how do we create a well-aligned system? Am I capturing that systems approach adequately?
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay. So then my follow-up, I guess, is, as you were doing this work, because no system design just moves without any sort of mid-course correction or shifts. So what might be one example of how you use some systems thinking to adjust your plan based on the feedback you were getting?
Well, you mentioned alumni, and what we try to do is leverage on not only the feedback from our graduates, but the connectivity to the industries that they are in. A systems approach, at least tangentially, if not directly, is, what are you doing within the course of your day, your week, your marking period, your semester, your year, that is preparing students for when they leave? How does the inside of the school connect to the outside? And there's 2 perennial questions that students always ask, in particular at the high school level. Why do I need to know this? And when am I going to ever use this bit of information or this knowledge and or skill? And my contention is, if you can't answer those questions, then you need to rethink what you're doing. And so that is kind of a systematic approach to everything that we build for students. What is it that we're doing that is going to help them on their path on their own journey? And it's very stylistic to say, and everybody nods their heads when you say it, but it's a lot harder to put into practice.
What did you hear from your alumni? What did they say?
what is amazing is that the things that you hear consistently from alumni, from the people that they're not all owners of the company, that they work for the companies. Like one of our alumni one of the things we do is we have these things called alumni forums, and we bring our alumni back. We started when it was COVID, we did it digitally, but now it's nice because they can come back in person. So one's an orthopedic surgeon, and he's talking about what it took to be successful and in terms of getting where he's at. One is an attorney, and so on and so forth. And the common thread among all of them is the ability to work as a member, as a team, the ability to get along with colleagues, the ability to, if you are in a leadership position, to motivate people, the ability to take constructive feedback, because it's going to come, even a top-notch surgeon is going to get somebody's not going to be happy with how the operation came out. And so that was a theme that resonated. The ability to adapt to change, and that change is constant.
I'd like to ask you a question I ask every guest who comes on the show. How does the term an imperfect leader resonate with you?
It resonates with me in that if we have a growth mindset, then we really ought to recognize that we're ever evolving. We are, there are no real final destinations, right? Everything is a process. Everything is a journey. And regardless of what you think of him, I'm a basketball guy. I played basketball in college. I coached for many, many years. And I always marveled at Bobby Knight, the way his brashness, but he was an innovator, and he said something one time that really, really struck me. He said, I can learn something from anybody except officials. And so, it's like, you need to understand that even the people who are criticizing you, even the people who, who vote no at times, who don't align with your idea, your vision, you can learn something from them. And I think if we stop and we really reflect, maybe sometimes you can learn a lot from them, and you can, and like, why are they so opposed to what I'm trying to accomplish? I mean, it's very easy to work with and get along with people who agree with you all the time. And sometimes when you get to a point like being a superintendent, it's difficult to find that nuanced balance, because you have to work at engendering feedback from people that is divergent. Because if all you're hearing all the time is, yeah, that's a great idea, Mike, you're probably not facilitating the type of dialogue where people feel open to give you their frank opinion.
And we'll be right back. An Imperfect Leader, Leadership in After Action is supported by ILAA, a firm dedicated to supporting aspiring new and established leaders. For more information, please find them at human-centeredleaders.com. We're back for segment 2 of An Imperfect Leader, called Imperfect Leadership in After Action. Dr. Michael Rossi is my guest. Michael is superintendent for Lenape Valley Regional High School in Stanhope, New Jersey. And in this segment, we ask our guests to deconstruct a decision that they had to make, and then we discuss it a bit. Mike, what happened?
It was 2008.
I'm going to add some sound. Going back in 2008.
Right. So I was actually going into my 4th year as a superintendent, but I was relatively new to the position, and very new to the district I was going into. I was coming from a K-8 district with 1,000 students, 2 buildings, going to a K-12 with much, much larger and a very large comprehensive high school, 7 schools. And so that part of it was very new. The middle school principal was in his first year as an administrator. And when we both arrived at our professional stations that summer, we started to look at the middle school sections and levels. And it was a very, very traditional ability grouping, AKA tracking model, to the point where there was like about 9 different levels. And so I had a lot of training and in my own education in terms of what, where I was heading towards philosophically, and the middle school principal was aligned. We were much more of the belief that we needed to open it up and students, because if you were not in one of the top 2 or 3 groups, we had the data that showed the trajectory. You were not getting into an honors level by the time you were a freshman. Before you into an honors level, you weren't getting into AP, and so it was kind of this self-fulfilling prophecy. So what we did is we sat down, basically the 2 of us with the assistant superintendent for curriculum, and we eliminated all the groups. And then all the placement letters went out about 2 weeks later, and the phones just started ringing off the hook.
Parents lost their minds.
And why is my child not in the top section, which was then would be at 7th grade to be 7-1, 8th grade to be 8-1, and so on. And it just spiraled, and then the trustees started to ask questions. And so we decided we were going to have a meeting. We're going to have a public meeting, and we were going to invite anybody that want to come. And it was at the middle school auditorium. And we put together this PowerPoint, and we had some of the supervisors there, and we were putting it together, and we were rehearsing it. And we hadn't been out into the auditorium in several hours, because we were in our office we were in the principal's office. And we stepped into this auditorium, and there was about 500 people in it. And I would say, with the exception of the supervisors who were there to support us, no one was there to support us. And it was, I don't want to say it was cataclysmic, but it was rough. It was the roughest 4+ hours I had ever spent. There was 2 lines, but there was a microphone, on each side, and there was 2 lines, a dozen people deep, and they just blasted us to no end. And we took it. We actually held our ground. We kept the heterogeneity. 2 years later, we had all the data to support the decision, but we lost an awful lot of credibility with the parents at that point.
So a lot of lessons learned, and I'd like to walk through it with you here.
Yes,
that is, that is quite a story. And so if I'm just recapping, using a systems thinking model, a stock flow map, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, the stock is, we want to increase the number of students who graduate our high school, college life, ready, right? They're college career life ready. And in order to do that, we have to look back down our system to say, how are we preparing kids to be ready to be college career life ready? And one piece is looking at your middle schools and saying, well, look at that. In 7th and 8th grade, we immediately exclude a good number of students if we maintain the system we have in place, which is that in 7-1 and 7-2, those are your 2 highest level math courses. Those are the kids who are going to fill that stock of college career life ready. But everybody else, 7-3, 7-4, 7-5, 7-6, 7, whatever, they're the ones who are less likely going to be able to enroll in those honor AP and graduate our school district with the skills that they need. So we're going to stand in support of students. And so you and the new principal make this decision. And as you've just described, it doesn't go so well in terms of the way it's received. Not its intent, but the way it's received. And so as we look back on this decision, what got overlooked?
Inclusion, communication, process. one of the things that I had prided on myself, even before I got there, and certainly since then, as a part of a growth element to this as a result of it. And it just seemed so straightforward to the two of us and to the couple of other people that were also educators. We couldn't see the forest for the trees. There was an education committee to the Board of Education that felt like they were ostracized, from the process. The parents felt like here's this new guy coming in and doesn't even give us an opportunity to express our opinion. In July, no less. Here's the new principal. He's probably just tagging along because he's the new guy, and there's the new boss. He doesn't want to ruffle any feathers. The teachers weren't happy, and so.
Probably also the teachers of 7-1 and 7-2 who, kind of used to having the self-directed, ready to go kids in their class. Now we're going to share the students, and that comes with multiple different levels of need.
And let's just say that when you go from a strictly ability group framework in a place like we were at to mixed ability, the demographic of who's sitting in the seats can change dramatically, and so that was unnerving for a lot of the stakeholders. And I'll just leave it at that. That was really the foundational resistance to it. But nonetheless, I mean, thinking about it now, it was just foolhardy. I could have gotten to the same place 12 months later, by just rolling this out, having some meetings, stakeholder feedback, visiting other districts that had done it. Just almost
right.
kind of
creating that task force. We're going to look into this. We have some thoughts about this, but we're going to do some deep study. We're going to do some deep learning together, bringing your board along, right? All of those pieces. That educational committee that felt that they were sidelined. Yeah. What did you learn about relationships?
So there is a kind of an idiom, if you will, for those folks in real estate, and it goes like this: location, location, location. In my line of work, it's relationships, relationships, relationships. You have to constantly be cultivating them. You have to constantly be nourishing them. They can be very, very fragile. And even at times when you think that you are solid in your relationships with, whether it's a committee of the board as a whole, your teachers union. I mean, there's so many different factors, and once you have one settled over here, you're good with the teachers union, maybe not so good with the parents right now. You're good with the PTO, but the athletic boosters maybe are happy for a variety of reasons, right? You're good with the board, but your leadership team's upset because in tough budget times, the first positions they want to take are the leadership position. And so those are constantly in flux, and I believe steadfastly that I've gotten a lot better over the course of the years. I am genuine. I don't think anybody has ever accused me of trying to buffalo them. Probably that's a fault. Charming people is something that is important, but I also feel like being honest with them is a heck of a lot more important.
Being authentic. Yeah.
Being authentic is a better word. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I sense that from you. What frustrated you?
In that situation? What frustrated
Sorry,
me,
I'm nodding, but then I realized no one can hear
yeah,
me.
no, what frustrated me was I knew better, and it was evident right out of the gate, and I felt that there was a lot of angst that a lot of good people had to endure that we otherwise would not have had to. And it didn't derail us, because there was a lot of us who were new at the time, and I was replacing someone who had been there a long time, and in many ways, it was ripe for change, but not at that pace. And that was very frustrating for me because I had no one but the person in the mirror to hold it, but the person I saw in the mirror to hold primarily accountable for it, if not exclusively accountable.
In the end, what was something that was good that came out of your experience?
So we used to have, in this state, we still have a variation of it, but we used to have three groups that you would fall into when you took state assessments. And you were either advanced proficient, you were proficient, or you were partially proficient. And that was based on how you did on standardized New Jersey Assessment of Skills and Knowledge, it's called the NJ-ASK. And so the year prior, we were somewhere in the neighborhood, across the board, even in science, and science was always like kind of a gimme in New Jersey. It wasn't a challenging task, but math and language arts definitely were. We were somewhere order of magnitude of, like 13% advanced, 25 proficient, and the rest, 52 partially. And we flipped that all around. We got up to about 60%. But combination 60, 65, 70% proficient, advanced proficient in the first year alone. And we took off from there, and we were doing great by the third year. So the end result, if that is the barometer you want to use, which is not a great barometer in and of itself.
No, however, it is a way to quantify whether or not the decision, the lever that you pulled was the right one. And it sounds like 2 or 3 years later, or even a year later, you started to see a real shift where the previous system had cheated kids out of the opportunity to do well on an external assessment. It shouldn't be the one be all and end all in terms of deciding whether, it's not a character assessment of children, but it does give you an idea of how kids are doing. And I bet you're going to tell me, and then you had another meeting and there were 500 people in the auditorium and they were there to celebrate that decision you made. No, I'm just kidding. They didn't come. Right? No. Everyone's very willing to tell you you're a bum, but nobody's calling you to say you're doing a bang up job. Keep it up.
Well, interesting side note to all of this. I, even when I had, 9 schools in a district, I would go to as many things as I could in all the back to school nights. We structured them so I could get, even if I had to do two or three in one night. And I went back to this very middle school with some data, armed with some data, 2 years hence, and presented it, and there were crickets. It was a full bag. I didn't get around to reply. They still were mad at me.
You're like, is this mic on? It's on. It's on, Rossi. It's on. My guest again today was Dr. Michael Rossi, and I just thank you so much, Mike, for being my guest. There's a phrase from your strategic plan that really resonated for me. It had to do with considering the traits that leaders will need in an ever-changing world, and it's so true. This world is unpredictable. And it's ever changing. But there are some things we know to be true today and well into the future. And these are things that you even reference in terms of what your alumni have told you, what your current students are telling you, what parents are looking for. Traits like empathy and compassion and creativity and curiosity, the collaborative nature, being able to be an adaptable thinker, be a great teammate, being humble. These are habits that create connection. And when practiced and modeled, they yield transformational change for individuals and their communities. And I just get a sense that Vision 2027 is going to bring you that much closer. And so I just want to say thank you so much for being my guest.
Thank you very much. Have a great night. Take care.
Music for An Imperfect Leader was written and arranged by Ian Varley. Sam Falbo created the Daruma doll butterfly artwork. Imperfect leadership is not a scarlet letter. It is a badge of honor. It recognizes that serving as a lead learner is about being a vulnerable leader, an empathetic leader, a compassionate leader. And I'm proud to be an imperfect leader, so I hope you'll join me next time for another episode of An Imperfect Leader, Leadership in After Action.